Hello, everybody. My name is Andrea Brito, and I am network navigator for KC Source Link and Missouri Source Link. And remember, you guys have the chat box right there next to the screen if you guys want to send the questions and stuff. And um, if you guys have any questions or concerns, let us know. You guys can visit our website at kcsourcelink.com or Missouri Sourcelink, mosourcelink.com. Um, Today, thank you for being here. Um, is We have Charlotte Clark, and she's gonna be talking about problem solving and idea mastermind. And so, thank you so much, Charlotte, for being here, and you can take it away now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you to Andrea for the introduction. Hi, everyone. So glad that you all could be here. I'm really excited to get started and jump right into this. Yeah, so this is the Problem Solving and Idea Mastermind event. Since the second half of this is going to be an idea mastermind, and hopefully people and participants have ideas that they'd like to talk about, there will be a second portion of this that is inviting of participation. As an introduction before all that, I thought that I would just put some questions out here, kind of get everybody's talking in the chat. So the first questions are just fun facts, I guess, about you. And then the last one is going to be sort of the introduction into the mastermind. So anything that you need help with that you'd love to get some ideas from this community of this event, this would be the time to sort of put those in there. If you put like need help colon or like help with colon, then we'll be able to sort of sift through a lot of the other comments and figure out that those are the ones that we want to talk about. So yeah, please put all your answers in the chat. I can't really see it currently, but I will hopefully have access to it in the middle. Yeah, so I'm gonna give you guys a few minutes to type in your answers. I'll just answer both of them really quickly out loud for myself. So the first thing I learned this year is that I'm very much an extrovert. Being in quarantine and just like hang out at home, I don't know if I was necessarily built for this currently. So all of my favorite activities have been outside. And so it's just been an adjustment trying to figure out what I can do inside and like staying safe and that sort of thing. And then my favorite thing about GW this year has just been that it's been virtual. I've had a full-time job previously, so did not have any access to being able to go into the city and attend events. So I'm just really excited to be able to attend things this year and then to also have the opportunity to present. So please feel free, put your answers in the chat, and then we'll just jump right in here. Okay, awesome. So welcome again to the Problem Solving and Idea Mastermind. This is just a quick overview of what we'll be talking about. I'll go over a quick introduction of myself, even though I just kind of gave you some fun facts real quick. And then I will also talk about my 5 problem solving steps. I think actually these are pretty general, but it's kind of my take on them. So I'll go over them as a very brief overview, and then I'll go into each one of them in depth. There will be some time for question and answer if you have very specific questions about the problem solving stuff that I talked about. And then about halfway through, we'll be able to do the idea mastermind. So any ideas or problems that you are having currently right now that you would really love to have a community help you out with that problem, this would be the time to share it. And then near the end, we will also have another time for questions. You can really ask me anything at that point. So, okay. Introduction to me, like Andrea said, I am Charlotte. I've been living in Kansas City for 6 years, so I'm a KC transplant. As I had said before, all of my favorite activities involve not being in the house. So I really love meeting and talking to new people, and I love eating out at restaurants. Thankfully, you know, having the delivery option and takeout option has been amazing because I still eat out. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me, I guess, in a personal light. And then in the professional area, I was a software engineer for 6 years. Um, and the past year, I've worked a lot more with entrepreneurs and small businesses and startups. Earlier this month, I actually transitioned out of software engineering, and I'm now sort of working all the time with startups and small businesses. And then I also founded a business in July. So I'm also a new business owner. So, obviously this week is all about entrepreneurship. So I'm just really excited to be able to be here in this sort of new entrepreneurship capacity that I'm in currently. Okay, so we're just going to jump right in and talk about these problem solving steps. So these are the 5 I've outlined below that we're going to talk about. First one is narrowing down your problem. Sometimes problems can kind of get large and convoluted, and so you definitely need to find just like a portion of something that you can figure out, and then from there work through it. Then you want to research and understand your problem through a couple of different methods. But hopefully that research can kind of help you to inspire you to figure out next steps. And I say next steps because it's not necessarily like, oh, you have a problem and then you jump right to a solution. It's a lot more about learning about your problem, learning about the steps that are taking you there. And then sometimes through that whole path, you kind of land on a solution. So after you brainstorm next steps, you're going to find a couple that you really think are going to be great to start. And then you're going to implement those. And as I said before, this is kind of an iterative and repetitive process. So if you are in a next step process and you want to implement, there's always chances to go back to step 1 or step 3 or whichever step you need to be at, and sort of keep moving through these steps until you find a solution. So the first step, as I said before, is narrowing down your problem. So like I said before, problems sometimes can get really large, really complicated, maybe a little overwhelming. The great way to start out is to really find that root of your problem. So um, that can be kind of hard to just think about on your own. I'm someone who's more visual, so I would say that you'd want to write everything that you know about your problem down and sort of sift through that and find where you think is like a great starting point. Um, Another sort of metaphor, other than like a root of a tree, is thinking about symptoms of a problem versus the root. You could solve each symptom individually, or you could, find that root, solve it, or at least learn more about it, and hopefully it will apply to a few more of the sort of stems or branches of your problem. So once you have figured out that root, you will then be going to step 2, which is researching and understanding. So this really depends on what kind of problem it is, but you're generally wanting to gather as much information about the problem and where you think you'll want to go in the solution. So personally, when I have issues and when I have like problems that kind of stop me from doing anything, I just have to reflect on whether or not how this problem impacts me currently, how I think the solution can impact me, and just understanding that kind of information is going to help in the long run when you're trying to figure out next steps. If it's a business problem, you definitely want to talk to other people about your issue or your problem, because you are not only creating the solution for you, you are hopefully going to be creating it to sell to people. So you definitely need to talk to other people to make sure that where you think the problem is where other people think the problem is. So when you want to talk to people, I would highly suggest either using interviews or forums. Both types give you a really large amount of information, but I guess in different formats. So interviews, when you're interviewing someone one-on-one, you're going to get a lot more in-depth information about that person's details on the problem. So you're able to ask follow-up questions, you're able to dig deeper into what they tell you. Whereas with forums, you have a really large breadth of information that you're getting, generally because forums are people talking over a long period of time. So you might not necessarily be able to answer or ask follow-up questions and get follow-up answers, but you will get a very general idea about, where they see this problem at, if they see it as a problem, and if they've ever thought about any way to solve it. So as you're doing this research, you should be writing down parts of it that really resonate with you, that you think are really great aspects of things that you can kind of come up with for next steps. So third step is to brainstorm avenues. Like I had said previously, you are not necessarily brainstorming, you're not necessarily brainstorming solutions, like that is a really hard and difficult kind of jump to make from a problem to solution. You're right now just kind of figuring out what is the next step to approach your problem. So for me, as I'm doing research or as I'm talking to people, that sort of inspires me to think of things. And so the creativity there is really going to flow into how you brainstorm. But there, other people are not like me. So you just got to figure out what is going to get you into a creative space that is going to get you to be able to list out next steps. So I also put on this slide that you can use a diverse community as sounding boards, which is hopefully what we're going to be doing in the middle part with this mastermind. Sometimes other people's perspectives can really help you to be like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. That is a really great idea. So that sort of should preface or be part of the brainstorm. And when you are brainstorming, you want to make sure that you are not trying to filter anything out. You're really just writing down all of your ideas. You do not have to, qualify each idea as stupid or absurd. You really just want to write everything down because all of it is really going to be helpful in the long run as you continue to move towards finding a solution. So after you brainstorm, you have a bunch of steps. You're going to look at those and edit them. And by editing, I don't necessarily that you're like crossing things out or erasing anything, but more like looking through, figuring out, this step kind of falls into this step. Ordering them, I guess, is a better way to say. You're going to be ordering your next steps and trying to figure out which ones you think might be easier to implement, which ones you're really passionate about starting immediately. Those are the ones you want to prioritize and start with first. So you're going to choose one or two ideas that you really think are the ways to go with your problem in a next step form. And then you're going to take that one and you're going to try it out and see what happens. I really think that starting with one next step instead of trying to do like 2 or 3 is really going to keep you focused on what that next step is, what you're doing in that next step. And then any sort of feedback you get from there is going to be really easy to pinpoint. I did this next step. This is what happened. Now I can figure out from there how I can move forward. So once you have that next step and you're implementing it, you want to make sure that you're noting what is working well and what isn't working so well. That is going to give you a lot of information about this next step. Do you keep going with it? Do you want to pull it back and edit and try again? All of this is going to be really great information that you're going to learn from. So you definitely want to make sure that you are learning from your next step. And, if you've completed it or if it's not working, you just, go back to step 4, review the next steps, find the next or the subsequent next step that you want to try and go from there. So some things to remember just about this whole process is that it's all kind of an experiment, especially because we're, step 3, you're brainstorming avenues. None of those are necessarily going to be the way that you are going to get to your solution. So it's all a big experiment. And with that experiment, you just got to make sure that you are documenting what is and what isn't working. And you're making notes and all that sort of learning is really helping you to progress towards a solution. So the other part of the experiment part is that you want to make sure that you're making a few attempts. So, if you do a next step and you're like, this doesn't work for me, don't stop there. Try it a few more times. Make sure that you are really actually applying that step and then really learn from that. Any of these are failures. They're all things that you can learn from. So any, roadblocks or speed bumps or things that you think are failures, it's all a learning experience. So you definitely want to make sure that you're keeping an open mind and you're trying everything, and all of it is really just going to help you learn, what next step should I take from here? Where is the solution at? And really get you to that final spot. And lastly, you want to make sure that you are thinking about the way that next steps work for you personally. I think sometimes it can get really hard when you have a friend or you have someone that you trust tell you, like, this is the thing to do, you have to do this step. And if it doesn't work for you, that doesn't necessarily mean that like you're doing it wrong. Maybe, you just have a different personality or different um, style of thinking, and so maybe that step is not really in line with where you are at. So definitely making sure that as you're going through that process, you're really sticking to your strengths and you're really sticking to what works well for you. All right, so this is the time for any questions about the steps that I just outlined. um, any of them, all of them, any sort of questions in that front would be awesome to see. I will look through the chat. Oh yeah, okay, so there's one comment that I would like to talk about real quick. Daniel from Lakehurst Consulting said that sometimes problems have more than one root cause, which is a really good point. You definitely want to be aware that there are multiple root causes, and then definitely take the one that has the most impact. Um, yeah, that is a great point. Thank you. Um, awesome. Okay. If there are any other questions, um, please post them right now, and we'll just move really smoothly into the idea mastermind. So I invite everybody to turn on their cameras, and then I do not see any um, that really pertain to wanting to start with this mastermind. So if anyone currently would like to start off this idea mastermind, you can unmute your mic and just tell us what your idea is, tell us what your problem is, and maybe where you're getting stuck. All right, please, please. What were you about to say? Any problems. It can be a business problem. It can be something you're just generally stuck on. I think I'm personally here just to hear any sort of issues you're having, and I'd love to help. And I'm sure that everybody else who's participating is also willing to help in any capacity. Okay, awesome. So it sounds like you're just trying to figure out basically how to package it, how to price it, that type of information. Okay, awesome. Is anybody that is a participant have any insights that they'd like to share? Okay, please. Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, I was also just going to say that I think within startups, it's kind of hard when you're first starting out, especially, is just like there's so much stuff as you start out as a business that you're kind of thinking about that ethics is not necessarily one of those higher things. So I think definitely being able to talk very frankly about, why having ethics or training on ethics in the beginning of your business journey is going to help long term. I think that that's probably something within your messaging that could really help them to start thinking about it. Maybe that they don't necessarily buy it, or maybe offering free or discount programs makes sense. Um, but at least gets them in that mindset of, okay, like this is something that I really need to be thinking about in the future. Mhm. Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for sharing. Does anybody else have any sort of comments or ideas that they wanted to share? Yeah, is there anybody else who has any other feedback they'd like to give? Okay, awesome. Thank you. I cannot see anybody's names, so thank you to everyone who's responded, and thank you to like bringing up the ethics piece. I think that idea is definitely needed, and I hope that this sort of helps you try to pivot. Um, yeah, I can so I can see there's a chat, but I can't see it. So um, awesome. Okay. Does anybody else have an idea or a problem they'd like to share with the group? Okay. Yes. Mhm. Are you in Kansas City? Okay. So the best thing I think I heard from you was that you have customers who are asking you to make more, which is a great place to be at because you're not just kind of like assuming that people will buy it, but people are directly telling you that they'll buy your stuff. Um, so I would say possibly, entering pitch competitions and starting to fund a little bit that way. Um, there are a few things I heard that make your offering sound different than, people who generally are, selling clothes. The fact that it's not aged, it's very based on the size of the child, which makes that, I think, more universal than a lot of other clothing cases. Um, so I would say that you don't necessarily have to put in the money yourself. There are ways that you can sort of fund some of that outside of you, and then just sort of come up with other ideas as to like how do you. I don't really know much about clothes, so I can't really say, if there's a way that you can start to manufacture clothing, without necessarily having to, I don't know, make like 25 or, make large quantities. Um, but definitely if you have people who are pre-ordering, then you already know that people are willing to purchase from you. And then you can kind of, I think, get a better sense of how much money um, you would need to raise and how much money you'd need to put up in order to get those orders done. Yeah, Charlotte. Generally, like startups are probably in a more startup area of the world. People are really starting to get into pitching and pitch competitions. So you're basically outlining the problem you're solving, what your solution is doing, and sort of how that solution is different than the competition, how much um, other clothing, like how big your clothing market is, things like that. And that type of information in sort of a small, bite sized amount of information can really entice um, investors, possibly, and then also just generally people who judge pitching competitions. So there's a few among Kansas City. Digital Sandbox is one very specifically for tech, but I think there's like 1 million cups is one. Um, of course, now that I'm trying to think of it, I'm all blanking out. But there are a lot of ways that you can find places who are willing to give out money for pitches, um, as well as possibly incubators. So generally, incubators are, I think, sometimes geared more towards tech businesses, but there are incubators around that are not necessarily geared towards tech, and they can also sort of help you not only with your business model, but get you ready to be in a space where you can start pitching and getting money that way. Yeah. There was one question from Kim Johnson who messaged it. She wants to ask you, what's your current process for measuring slash analyzing your order requests? And have you noticed any trends? Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think while you're sort of trying to figure out how do you expand, um, possibly part of that is just researching how can you create clothes faster so that you're not necessarily having to like guess and estimate, numbers of the clothes that you do sell out, the clothes that you don't sell out. Like I said, I do not really have a very vast like how you create clothing. Um, but I think for a lot of businesses, it's really about okay, how can I make money and how can I use my resources in the correct way without necessarily like making extras of things that I'm going to have to like recycle or throw away. And maybe that's just a part of you trying to figure out how you expand because at some point it's going to get unfeasible for you to sort of create a number of clothing and then like really hope that people buy it. Yeah, no worries. I'm so glad that you had something that you wanted to share, and I hope that the feedback you got is helpful for you. Okay, so we've just got a couple minutes left. So I just wanted to open the floor to everybody. Um, First off, thank you for attending. I'm just glad to see faces of people show up. So yeah, thank you everyone who's attended and who listened and who had questions. Thank you to Natalie and Dor. I'm sorry, I definitely butchered your name. Drawer. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Drawer and Natalie, for such participating in the mastermind, asking your um, problems or what you have as an idea. Really appreciate it. Um, and Daniel, thank you also, Daniel, who participated as well. Um, so just as a couple more minutes left, if anyone has any other questions or comments just in general about everything that we talked about, I'm here to answer them. And then as well, I've got my contact information down below. So feel free to email me, connect with me on LinkedIn, or follow me on Twitter. Apparently, Twitter is the way to go. I don't know. I don't tweet so much yet, but that seems to be sort of a thing that people do. So yeah, I'm just going to see if anyone has any questions. I'll answer them. But if not, thank you again for attending.